2 years ago I made a list of my top 7 favourite corals in my 4-foot Red Sea reefer aquarium. But since then I've removed over 50% of the corals from my tank with the intention of making this my ultimate reef tank packed full of nothing but beauties. So today I'll show you my new top 8 favourite corals, and if you stick around to the end I'll show you 3 frags I've bought recently that will almost certainly be on this list in 2 years time. First up is this Raja Rampage Chalice. I bought this as a 1-inch frag almost exactly 2 years ago and it has absolutely flourished. It took a while to get going, but after about a year it started to grow quite quickly and it's already in need of a haircut as it encroaches on the Jingle Bell Cyphastria to the right. It sits behind my weir box so it doesn't get strong light or flow, and despite its reputation I haven't found it to send out stinging sweeper tentacles, at least so far. And while green corals are 10 a penny in the hobby, the yellow and black eyes combined with the corrugated texture make this LPS coral really stand out. Number 7 is a smooth skin Acropora known as Pacman Hurlock. It has a reputation for being a little finicky, but at first it grew like crazy in my tank and spread at least twice as fast as any other Acropora corals I had. So much so that it started to shade out its neighbours, so I removed it to give it a bit of a trim. But it really didn't enjoy the haircuts and it almost completely stripped and died. Fortunately I managed to rescue a few frags and this piece has already started basing out again and is showing the same beautiful purple and green colours with lovely white growth tips. And I love the colours and the branching shape so much that I'll forgive its diva tendencies and I'll approach any fragging in the future with a due sense of caution. And now from the most sensitive coral on this list, we move on to one of the hardiest, the Seriatopora Caliendrum. This is also known as bird's nest coral, which is a hardy coral that makes a great first foray into the world of SPS. But while the normal green bird's nest can look a little boring, Caliendrum is an extremely bright coral and has a lovely close growing branching pattern, which looks a lot neater than the other green bird's nest. It is the single brightest coral in my tank, glows like an absolute bastard under blue LEDs, and is a super fast grower. In fact, I've had this coral for around 4 years and I've constantly hacked it back, sold off 80% of the colony, and watched it grow back again like I wish my hair would. Number 5 is a rather special Acropora that I haven't quite been able to identify. It could be a Paletta pink tip or maybe a rainbow loom, but whatever it is ruddy beautiful. These shots are taken under blue lights with an orange filter, but this is actually how it looks to my eye. And you can even see the purple and gold colouring under white lights during the day. It gets par of around 350 along with pretty strong flow and grows nice and fast, at least for an Acropora. And when I recently cut it in half as part of a rescape, it recovered instantly with no signs of ill health, so I'm putting it in the tricky but not too delicate category of SPS. Number 4 on my list of favourite corals is the ridiculously named Optimus Prime from Euro Corals in Germany. And this is one of the weirdest corals on this list. And the weird thing about it is its growth pattern, which is typical branching Acropora, at least you might think from these shots. But I've had it 2.5 years now, so this is not exactly a lot of branches, and that is because all it has done is base out. Now it's of course common for SPS corals to base out, but this thing has carpeted the entire width of my weir box and has only started shooting up branches in the last 6 months, which quite frankly is taking the piss a bit. Now if and when it starts to shoot up branches from its base, it will either end up looking absolutely awesome, or blocking all the flow in my tank as well as half the light and becoming a complete pain in the arse. First on the podium is the coral I get asked about most in the comment section, this bright yellow Pikachu Acropora. I bought this as a 1-inch frag a year ago and it's now starting to grow out a little more quickly, having established a solid base. Now you don't get many yellow SPS corals, and this one is truly yellow, not just a light shade of green. It also has red burgundy polyps which really stand out next to the yellow body, and it shines as brightly under white lights as it fluoresces under blues. It gets par of around 350 to 400, and I've placed it next to a pink tenuis that should provide great colour contrast when the tenuis grows up. And the runner-up is this Montipora powellonensis. Now given the size of this coral, you would be forgiven for thinking I've only bought it recently. But believe it or not, I've actually had it around 3.5 years. And this is another coral that has steadfastly refused to grow for a long time and has only started taking off in the last 6 months. Now with this particular coral, it's taken me a bit of time to figure out what conditions it likes most, and I've moved it around a few times since I've had it. But it seems to like low to medium light with low to medium flow. Now there are a few designer Monties like this with various crazy names, but none I've seen have such bright blue polyps, and it's that unusual splash of turquoise that earns it a place on this list. Now before I get to my favourite coral, there are a few honourable mentions that didn't quite make the cut. This jack-o'-lantern Leptoceras is the second brightest coral in my tank. Then this deep purple Acropora Donii, which was the closest to making the final list, and a couple of my Acropora colonies that don't quite have spectacular colours, but still look great because they've nicely grown out so you can see their true growing patterns. And don't tell anyone, but I even secretly still love my Tropic Thunder Monty, despite the fact that it grows like an absolute weed and wipes out anything in its path. But my single favourite coral is this strawberry shortcake Acropora, and this is the only coral on this list that also made my previous list 2 years ago. But back then it looked like this, a lot more drab and with not a lot of growth. Now I actually bought this coral 5 years ago as a 1-inch frag, and it took years before it did any growing and even longer to start properly colouring up. But I just left it to its own devices, and that has well and truly paid off. I fragged it a couple of times in the last year to stem excess growth, but it's still the biggest colony in my tank, and par of around 350 with strong flow seems to be the order of the day. Now strawberry shortcake is a classic SPS coral that's been in the hobby for years, and for me it shows you don't always need the latest rainbow tenuis at £500 a nub to have a true centrepiece coral. And before I go, here's a quick look at the 3 frags I've recently acquired that could be something special. The first is a watermelon chalice with pink, yellow and green colourings that grow nice and brightly under blue lights. Then there are 2 lovely Goniopora corals. The first is an Inferno Goni, which has pinkish red tentacles and yellow tips. And the second has no name that I'm aware of, but has bright pink tentacles, bright pink tips and yellow centres. Now if you have a favourite coral, share it in the comment section below, and if you enjoyed the video, give me a thumbs up and subscribe for next week, and until next time, happy reefing.